A safe, pre-recorded interview between Anderson Cooper and Meghan Markle spirals into a psychological duel when both arrive with something to prove. What starts as a careful media appearance turns into a raw confrontation about victimhood, power, and truth, and the real scandal isn't what airs on TV, but the unedited footage that leaks later and forces viewers to choose whose version of reality they believe. Now, here's the full audio-style story, starting right from the hook and straight into the interview. This interview was never meant to air the way it happened. By the time Meghan Markle whispered "cut this" into her microphone, 3 cameras were already catching the moment her mask slipped, and so did his. The 60 Minutes studio looks almost holy under the lights. Black walls, soft glow, that cathedral silence right before the first question. Meghan sits in the chair they'd carefully chosen for her, low arms, soft gray fabric, the kind that makes everyone look a little more fragile, a little more human. Her hands rest lightly on her lap, palms open, like she's here in peace. Across from her, Anderson Cooper flips through his notes one last time. Calm, composed, that familiar silver hair catching every shard of light. He's done wars, hurricanes, dictators. Tonight, it's a duchess in a cream dress and a rehearsed smile. Rolling, someone murmurs in the dark. The red light blinks on. Meghan, Anderson begins, voice low and steady. "Thank you for being here." She gives that soft, controlled smile. "Thank you for having me." It sounds polite. Almost warm. If you muted the audio, you'd think this was going to be another careful, polished conversation. But the mics pick up everything, the faint catch in her breath, the slight tremor in the air when she shifts in her seat. Anderson doesn't waste time. "Last time you sat down for an interview like this," he says, "the world watched every second, debated every word. Tonight, you asked for something different. You asked for control." He glances down at his notes. Editorial input. Final approval on certain segments. There's a tiny pause. It's the first hairline crack. Meghan keeps her smile, but it tightens. "I asked for fairness," she corrects softly. "After everything that's happened, I think that's reasonable, don't you?" He nods, almost sympathetic. "Reasonable," he repeats. "But unusual." He lets that hang there. She hears it. So does everyone else. "I'm not ordinary," she says lightly, and there's an edge under the joke. "Nothing about my life has been usual for a long time." He leans forward a little. "Let's start there. You said many times you were unprotected, unheard, when you joined the royal family. You've said the institution failed you. And tonight, you're here again. Different chair. Same spotlight. What are you still trying to fix?" The question lands harder than it sounds. Her gaze flickers, just once. She's practiced for days. Media training, talking points, safe phrases. But nothing quite prepared her for that particular word. "Fix," she repeats. "I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm trying to tell the truth." "Your truth," Anderson says gently. Her head tilts. "Is there another kind?" she asks. He smiles politely. "Some people would say there's what you lived, and then there's what everyone else experienced around you. Sometimes those don't match." There. The first spark. Meghan's fingers tighten on her knee, nails pressing just enough to feel. "Of course they don't match," she says. "You can stand beside someone in a burning building and still not feel the same heat." Anderson nods. It's a good line. He gives it a second to breathe before he goes in again. "You felt the heat," he says. "But some of your critics argue you threw gasoline on it. That you chose the most public route, the biggest platforms, the biggest microphones. That you didn't just walk away, you went on tour." Her jaw clenches. If the camera zoomed in, you'd see the muscle jump. "I went where I was finally allowed to speak," she replies. "After years of being told, keep quiet, smile, don't make trouble." And now, he asks, "Are you making trouble?" For the first time. She laughs. Not the pretty talk show laugh. Something sharper. I'm making sure people understand I'm not what they made me, she says. If that's trouble, then so be it. Behind the glass, producers shift. The control room watches waveforms rise and fall on their monitors. They know the rhythm of a good interview, the ebb and flow. This one is different. Every line feels like the start of a courtroom cross-examination, and both sides think they're the one wearing the robe. Anderson switches pages. Let's talk about the public, he says. You've said you were treated like a character in a show. That people projected things onto you: saint, villain, opportunist, victim. What do you think you are now? Her eyes harden. Human, she says. And very tired. Tired of what? Being told I'm not allowed to be angry, she replies. That if I show hurt, I'm manipulative. If I stay quiet, I'm cold. If I speak loudly, I'm ungrateful. There's no right way to exist in a narrative you didn't write. He lets her speak. Lets the sentence stretch out, long enough that every listener leans closer. And then he slices through. And yet, he says, almost kindly, you've been writing your version for years now. Interviews, podcasts, a book, documentaries. You've had more airtime, more space, more ink than most people get in a lifetime. So I have to ask, when does telling your truth become protecting your image? That one, she wasn't expecting. You can hear it in the silence that follows. Not the TV silence that gets filled with music and B-roll. The real kind. The kind where even breathing feels rude. Meghan stares at him. My image, she says slowly. You think I care about my image after everything that's been said about me? I think you care very much, Anderson answers softly. And I don't say that as criticism. I think you care enough to demand final approval on questions you know might hurt. There it is. He's not just reading off social media comments anymore. He's reaching straight into their emails. The negotiations. The clauses. The last-minute calls from her team about unsafe topics. Her lips part. For a second she looks genuinely stunned. I asked you, she says carefully, not to go into certain things that are still painful. I thought that was human. Not controlling. And I agreed not to blindside you, he says. I didn't agree to stop asking difficult questions. Her eyes flick towards someone off camera. A publicist. A manager. Someone who promised her they had everything under control. She looks back at Anderson. Her voice drops. Which difficult questions, she asks. The ones people need answered, or the ones that make good headlines? He doesn't flinch. Sometimes, he says, they're the same. She inhales sharply. Ask them, then, she says. Ask what you came here to ask. He hesitates just a heartbeat. It's enough. Okay, he says. Let's talk about the emails. The room tightens. No one outside that studio knows about the emails yet. Not the audience, not the viewers, not the future YouTube commenters who will dissect every frame of this night. But Meghan knows. Her team knows. The network lawyers definitely know. Her voice is barely above a whisper. What emails? He doesn't reach for his notes this time. He already knows where they're filed. The ones where you told producers, he says, that if this interview didn't paint you as, and I'm quoting here, a survivor, not a complainer, you'd pull your participation and go to another network. She goes very still. Someone in the control room swears under their breath. That's a private communication, Meghan says slowly. Taken out of context. I'm not reading the rest, Anderson says. Just asking why someone who's tired of being a character is so invested in how her character arc looks on television. There's a faint rustle as she shifts in her chair. Her pulse is visible at her throat now. You think that's selfish, she says. I think it's interesting, he says carefully. I think viewers will find it interesting too. Her smile this time is a thin line of glass. You want to know why I wrote that, she asks. Because I know how this works. You'll keep the tears. You'll keep the pauses. You'll keep the parts where I look brittle and wounded. You won't keep the nights I didn't sleep for fear of opening my phone. You won't keep the jokes I made to stop myself from crying again. You'll choose the version of me that sells. And you're not doing the same, he asks quietly. Choosing the version of you that sells to your audience? That's the turn. Because suddenly it's not him pressing and her defending. It's two people holding up mirrors and hating what they see reflected back. Her voice drops even lower. You really want to do this, she murmurs. On camera? We already are, he says. She stares at him for a long moment. Then something subtle shifts. Her shoulders relax. Not in surrender, in decision. You know what you're not telling them, she says softly. That before we started, you came into my dressing room. You told me you got it. That you understood what it's like to be turned into a symbol instead of a person. You said, don't worry, we'll make this fair. A flicker crosses his face. The control room leans forward. And, he says. And now you sit there, she continues, and quote my private emails as if I'm some mastermind pulling strings. Do you know what that reads like? It reads like you needed me to be complicated enough to justify this interview. Not just hurt. Not just flawed. Strategic. Dangerous. So your viewers wouldn't get bored. His jaw tightens. That's not what I. But you won't tell them about your own emails, will you? She cuts in, eyes bright now. The ones where you told your team this could be the redemption piece for you after the last backlash. The ones where you said, we have to show we're tough but fair this time. No more being accused of going soft. The silence that follows isn't just tense. It's radioactive. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't confirm it either. Sources, he says finally, see what they want to see. Her laugh is soft and bitter. You and I aren't so different, she says. We're both trapped in other people's expectations of us. The difference is, when I fight mine, I get called manipulative. When you fight yours, it's called journalism. A producer's hand hovers over the cut gesture. No one gives it. Because this unscripted, uncontrolled, painfully human collision is better than anything they planned. Anderson breathes out slowly. Meghan, he says, do you ever wonder if you've become so used to being misunderstood that you now prefer conflict to resolution? That you need a villain to keep your narrative moving? Her eyes glisten now, but she doesn't look away. Do you, she counters. Do you ever wonder if peace would look boring in your segment list? For a moment, they just sit there. Two people in expensive chairs, under perfect lighting, with too many ghosts in the room. Then she does something no one expects. She reaches up and touches the side of her mic. This part won't air, she says quietly, almost to herself. Cut this. But the cameras are still rolling. The red light is still on. In the control room, no one moves. Anderson hears it. He hears the plea under the words. The tiredness. The terror of losing control one more time. I can't promise that, he says. She nods once, as if she knew he'd say that and asked anyway. All right, she whispers. She straightens in her chair, reassembling the public version of her face. Ask the next question, then. He hesitates. For the first time tonight, he looks unsettled. Maybe we shouldn't, he says. Maybe this is enough. She gives him a small, almost sad smile. Now you want to be gentle, she asks. Too late. He looks straight into the camera, then back at her. Last question, he says. You talk about escaping an institution that controlled your every move, your every word. Tonight, sitting here, with these lights, these edits, these lawyers, do you really feel free? There's no pause this time. No, she says. But at least now I get to choose which cage I walk into. That line will become the headline. The meme. The thing people quote without ever watching the full segment. But in the moment, it just sits between them like a shared confession. He nods slowly. "Thank you," he says, "for your honesty." She exhales, long and shaky. "You'll trim it," she says. "You'll make it neat." "Maybe," he admits. She stands, fingers already reaching for the mic wire. The crew begins to move, breaking the spell. Someone calls, "Cut." Another voice says, "We're clear." The room fills with that nervous post-interview chatter, half relief, half adrenaline. But the real story hasn't started yet. Because hours later, in a dim editing room, someone will drag a timeline across a screen and stop at the moment she touched her mic and whispered, "Cut this." They'll hover over the delete key. They'll remember the emails, the pressure, the promises. And they won't cut it. The broadcast that finally airs is messy, raw, less polished than anyone expected. It shows the cracks, the contradictions, the way two people can be both sincere and calculating at the same time. It doesn't give a neat villain. It doesn't hand out easy sympathy. And that's why the real scandal doesn't explode on television. It explodes online. Clips get ripped, recut, weaponized. Some call her manipulative, others call her brave. Some say he ambushed her, others say he finally held her accountable. The leaked raw footage, the parts that were never meant to leave the editing bay, shows what the final cut sanded down: the plea, the emails, the line about choosing cages. That's the version you're hearing now. The version that wasn't supposed to exist. So here's the question that still hangs over this interview like a ghost: who went too far? The woman who begged for control in a world that keeps scripting her, or the journalist who refused to hand her the pen? Listen again to the silence between their words. To the way both of them needed this moment, for very different reasons. Then decide for yourself. And if you've stayed with me all the way to the end, you already know one thing for sure: the most dangerous conversations aren't the ones that get scheduled. They're the ones that accidentally make it to air. Tell me in the comments whose truth you believe more, or if you think both of them were performing for you the entire time. And if you want more forbidden recordings and broken interviews like this, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and be ready. Because the next time the cameras start rolling, the cage door might already be locked.